Why was everyone laughing? She could still hear the echo of it, the sound of mockery, sharp as the rifle fire that cracked across the range. Fort Carson, morning sun, the smell of gun oil and hot brass. And Sarah Mitchell, standing at the edge of the firing line, trying to disappear behind her medical bag. Crack, crack, crack. Each shot made her flinch as if it tore through her chest. Holy hell, look at her, Sergeant's voice boomed across the range, laughter rolling out of him like thunder. Yo, Doc, this ain't a library. Medics don't fight, remember. The rest of the squad joined in. Laughter, whistles, a chorus of cruelty disguised as camaraderie. Sarah pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, clutching her bag. Her brown eyes, flecked with gold when the light hit them, darted between faces, searching for one that didn't look like an enemy. She found none. Her jaw clenched until it hurt. Her hands trembled, and from beneath her sleeve, a faint V-shaped scar caught the sunlight, a scar that told a story none of them were ready to hear. Pathetic, spat, the words slicing through her like shrapnel. Send her back to the hospital where she belongs. Leave the real work to soldiers. They didn't see the small tremor that wasn't fear, but restraint. They didn't see the way she whispered under her breath, so quiet even she could barely hear it. Not again, never again. In 20 minutes, they'd understand why a medic feared the sound of gunfire, and why that fear would save all their lives. The morning had started like every other one. 5:30 hours. Alarm blaring through another nightmare. Syria again, always Syria. She sat up in her bunk, drenched in cold sweat, chest rising and falling in ragged waves. The same dream, a street in Aleppo, the smell of cordite, the flash of a child's face. Then the explosion, always the explosion. Routine saved her, it always had. Count to 100. Check the med kit 3 times. Every bandage, every morphine cartridge, every tourniquet in place. Precision kept the chaos away. When her hands started shaking, she reached for the small orange bottle hidden deep in her footlocker. 2 pills, dry swallowed, propranolol. Her doctor called it anxiety medication. Sarah called it armor. She hid the bottle again beneath spare socks and folded fatigues. No one could know. Then she pulled out the old photograph, creased, edges worn to white. 4 figures in tactical gear, faces blurred, the kind of photo you keep when you want to remember but can't afford to reveal. Her finger traced over each shadow. I'm just a medic now, she whispered to them. Just a medic. But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. By 600, the mess hall was chaos. Boots stomping, trays clattering, voices overlapping. Sarah sat in the farthest corner, always the farthest, picking at her eggs like each bite was a. Slammed his tray down beside her. Coffee splashed across the metal table. Scared of breakfast too, Doc. The men around him laughed. His shadow formed a gun with his fingers and said, bang. Sarah jumped. Her cup toppled. Brown liquid bled across the table. Laughter roared around her like gunfire. Phones came out, screens flashing. Someone recorded her reaction, another meme waiting to happen. Corporal Lance, sitting a few tables over, didn't laugh. He watched her hands, the precision with which she cleaned the spill, the way she folded each napkin identically, 3 creases, perfect squares. He'd seen that kind of control before. It wasn't fear, it was survival. Leaned in, voice low. 2 weeks, Doc. 2 weeks till we deploy to Iraq. You planning to hide behind your medical bag the whole time? Sarah said nothing, just folded another napkin. What happens when the bullets are real? He barked. Yes, Sergeant, she whispered. Yes, what? Yes, I understand, she said, voice trembling but steady enough to pass inspection. Stood, addressing the entire room. Everyone, meet our combat medic who's afraid of combat. Maybe we should get her a whistle instead of a rifle. Laughter again, phones again. Sarah kept her eyes down, counting the scratches on the metal tabletop. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like the bodies. No, she wasn't going there, not yet. The firing range was mandatory. Every soldier qualified before deployment, even medics. Sarah had waited, hoping to run out of time, but didn't let that happen. "Ladies first, Doc," he said, dragging her by the arm to the firing line. "Can't have our medic failing her." The M4 felt heavy in her hands, too familiar, too real. The smell of gun oil, the cold metal, the click of the safety. Her breath hitched. Syria again. Blood on sand, the child in the doorway, her finger on the trigger. Safety, still on, genius, snapping her back to the present. Laughed, "This is incredible, she doesn't even know how to use it." Sarah's fingers brushed the selector switch off safe. Automatic, practiced, instinctive. Then she caught herself and fumbled deliberately. Let them think she didn't know. Lance saw it. The movement was too precise, too fast for a beginner. That wasn't fear. That was control, the kind that came from thousands of repetitions. 5 rounds, the range instructor shouted. "Make them count." Sarah raised the rifle. The target blurred through her scope not because of vision but memory. Her stance was wrong on purpose. Feet too close, shoulder loose. She fired. 5 sharp reports. 2 rounds drilled through the center, clean, surgical hits. 3 went wide, harmless. "Lucky shots," scoffed. "Even a broken clock's right twice a day." He didn't see it, the perfection of missing intentionally. To override instinct that deep, that took mastery. From the edge of the range, Lieutenant Colonel watched in silence. Civilian clothes on his hip, eyes that didn't match the expression on his face, eyes that knew. He typed something on his encrypted phone, never looked away from her. That afternoon, Sarah taught combat lifesaver training. Here she was confident, calm, teaching came easy. "Pressure above the wound," she explained, wrapping a tourniquet on a dummy's arm. "If bleeding doesn't stop within 30 seconds. Interrupted, "What if the medic gets shot first?" Laughter again. "Then you do what I taught you," she said evenly. "But let's make it realistic," said, pulling out his phone. "Sound effects." The crackle of gunfire filled the room. AK-47s, explosions, chaos. Sarah froze. The room blurred. The smell of cordite filled her nose. A scream, a flash, a child stepping out from rubble, her finger on the trigger again. The tourniquet fell from her hands. "She can't even tie a knot," shouted. "That's our combat medic people." The room roared with laughter again, but this time even hesitated. Something about her eyes, wide, unblinking, haunted, made the joke fall flat. "Mitchell." Captain Hayes's voice cut through the noise. "My office, now." She followed him silently, ignoring the murmurs and the bets they thought she couldn't hear. How else she last in Iraq? Smart money was on the first firefight. Hayes's office was bare, a desk, a chair, a wall of commendations. He didn't sit. "Your file is unusual." He tapped the folder on his desk. "Medical degree from Johns, enlisted instead of commissioning as an officer, and a lot of redacted sections." "Yes, sir." "I'm considering transferring you to a non-combat post," he said. "But we're short medics. You'll deploy with us, and after we'll revisit this." Sarah nodded, relief mixing with quiet dread. She could survive Iraq, then vanish again, change her name, start over. She'd done it before. She left his office, pulse steady, control restored. That night she reorganized her kit again. Every bandage, every perfect order. Lance sat across from her, watching. "Your reaction today," he said quietly. "That's not fear, that's trauma. I've seen it before." Sarah kept folding gauze pads. "I'm fine." He sighed, dropped a field manual on her bunk. "Read Chapter 7, might help." After lights out, she opened it. Sniper tactics, shooting under extreme stress. breathing, tremor control, target reacquisition. The diagrams were familiar, too familiar. She written some of them. The next week blurred into humiliation. Food thrown at her during meals, gear sabotaged, target practice called it. Weak medic. Dead weight. Sarah said nothing, accepted it all like penance. Penance for Aleppo. For the 3 teammates she couldn't save. For the child she couldn't shoot. For the lives she'd taken trying to fix it afterward. 7 days before deployment, the breaking point came. Final combat drill, simulated convoy ambush. A fake IED went off and Sarah froze, completely. Her body locked up, eyes empty. Had to tackle her into cover, screaming in her face, "You're going to get someone killed." The video went viral. Statue Sarah, they called her. 2 days later, hit a firecracker in her med bag. When it went off, she screamed a raw, primal sound and dropped to the floor, hands clamped over her ears. Flashback. Aleppo. Smoke, blood, the sound of her name through static. Then the explosion. When she came back, her uniform was torn. And for the first time, they saw them. The scars. Gunshot wounds, precision patterns. Not random, not accidental. Someone had targeted her, with intent, with training. Lance knelt beside her, voice low. "Those aren't injuries, those are interrogation scars." The room fell silent. Then at the doorway appeared again, calm, expression unreadable. He typed something into his encrypted phone. "Asset confirmed, Scorpion active." The reply came instantly. "Maintain cover, he's coming." His eyes softened as he looked at her, curled on the floor, trembling. For just a moment the mask slipped, and there it was. Pity. Deployment loomed like a sentence. And the woman they thought was a coward was about to show them what fear really looked like. Because fear wasn't weakness. It was memory. And hers was about to come roaring back. She didn't sleep the night before deployment. No one did, but for Sarah it wasn't excitement, it was calculation. Every item in her bag was packed 3 times, medical gear, syringes, surgical scissors, blood expander kits. Every piece of her life fit neatly into compartments. Control was all she had left. When the alarm hit 300, she was already awake, sitting on her bunk in the dark, lacing her boots with slow precision. Outside, the sound of engines, the low growl of military trucks rolling toward the flight line. She moved quietly, avoiding eyes, hiding the tremor in her hands. The barracks smelled of gun, oil, fear, and last-minute courage. And yet, for the first time in months, she felt calm. Not peace, just stillness. The kind that comes before a storm. The C-130 lifted off at 400 hours. Sarah sat near the rear of the aircraft, strapped between boxes of medical supplies and ammunition. Had made sure of that. "Doc sits in the safest spot," he said with a smirk. "Wouldn't want our scared little medic to catch a cold before we even see combat." Some laughed, others stayed quiet. The jokes had started to taste bitter. Sarah said nothing, eyes fixed on the red glow of the cargo lights. She knew something didn't. The rear of the aircraft was the most vulnerable position to flak, but she let him think otherwise. Let him think she didn't know. As the plane leveled, turbulence kicked in hard. Unsecured gear rattled, soldiers cursed, someone vomited. Private Miller, 19, first deployment, started hyperventilating. Panic hit him fast, chest heaving, eyes wide. Sarah unbuckled, moving through the chaos with a grace that didn't belong to someone afraid. Each movement smooth, precise, controlled. She crouched beside him, pressed 2 fingers to his neck, 1 to his wrist. "Breathe with me," she said softly, steady, commanding. "In 4 counts, out 4 counts." Her touch was exact pressure. Error in message stream. "Retry." "You said." 3. ChatGPT said. Got it, you want me to continue with part 3 of your cinematic, voiceover-ready story. Continuing from parts 1 and 2. Before I generate it, do you want me to? Start exactly where part 2 left off, inside the ambush sequence where the convoy is attacked and Sarah faces the moment she picks up the rifle. Or B. Start just after the ambush, when her identity as Phantom 27 is exposed and she becomes both healer and hunter. Your choice will set the packing and emotional tone for part 3, about 1,500 words. You said. Part 3. ChatGPT said. Perfect, here's part 3 of your cinematic, emotionally charged voiceover-ready story. She was dismissed with medics don't fight. Then the ambush forced her to pick up the rifle. This continues naturally from the previous sections. The ambush has erupted, the convoy is trapped, and Sarah stands on the knife edge between the medic she's tried to be and the ghost she once was. Cinematic voiceover narrative, part 3. They say time slows down when death comes for you. For Sarah Mitchell, it didn't slow, it sharpened. Every sound became a thread in the same impossible web. The rattle of machine gun fire, the hiss of sand kicked by bullets, the screams. The acrid smell of burning diesel hung thick enough to taste. The world was ending again, just like before. Only this time it was Syria. Contact left, contact right, someone shouted. The radio filled with static, overlapping calls for help. She crouched in the back of the MRAP, medical bag in her lap. Tremors raced through her fingers, the old tremors, the ones she swore she'd buried under pills and precision. A 19-year-old private, Miller, bled across the floor. His voice was a terrified whisper. "Doc, help me." Her training screamed, "Move." Her memory whispered, "Don't." Because outside, a sniper waited. He'd be watching for movement, waiting for her to break cover, waiting for the medic to choose between saving others and saving herself. And he'd planned this, all of it. The explosion behind the convoy wasn't random. It sealed their escape route. The one ahead was a trap. Everything about this kill zone was designed. Not insurgents, not amateurs. Operators. Her breath caught. There was only one man who fought this cleanly, this surgically. Scorpion. The voice over the radio confirmed it. "Hello, Phantom," it said, calm, perfect English, faint British lilt. 2 years since Syria. 2 years since you let my son die. Let's finish what we started." Her stomach turned to ice. "Who the hell is Phantom?" His voice crackled from the overturned lead vehicle. Sarah didn't answer, she couldn't. Because Phantom wasn't a name the army knew. It was a ghost the agency had buried. The seconds between heartbeats stretched. Gunfire chewed through concrete. RPG trails cut the sky. His vehicle took a direct hit, fire blossoming outward like an orange flower. Crawled through debris, one arm dangling uselessly, blood pouring from his shoulder. "Doc," he gasped, "do something." Sarah's medical bag felt heavier than any weapon she'd ever held. To save him, she'd have to leave the vehicle. Step into the open. Expose herself to Scorpion's scope. She stared at her trembling hands. They weren't shaking from fear anymore. They were remembering the feel of a rifle's grip, the weight of the trigger, the calm before the shot. Lance grabbed her shoulder. "Sarah, orders." He was bleeding from his thigh, eyes wild. Orders. They were waiting for her. Something deep inside her, something she'd starved for 2 years, opened its eyes. His voice cut through the chaos on the command net. "Sarah, listen to me. He's got assets at your sister's school in Virginia. He's forcing this. You know what he wants." Her sister, 16 years old. Sarah closed her eyes, took one breath, slow, steady. The kind she used to take before an impossible shot. When she opened them again, the fear was gone. She dropped the medical bag and picked up the rifle. The metal was warm against her palms. Familiar, intimate, like shaking hands with the part of herself she tried to kill. Chamber check, optics on, safety off. 2 seconds, perfect. Sarah, don't, Lance started, but she was already moving. She rose into the open hatch, rifle snug against her shoulder. The world narrowed to geometry and breath. 387 meters. Crosswind slight east. Target rooftop 4th floor, partial cover. Exhale. Hold. Trigger. Crack. The sniper's rifle flew from the window. A heartbeat later, a body followed it. Silence. Every soldier who could still hear stared in disbelief. The coward medic, the trembling, shaking girl who flinched at breakfast, had just made a shot that most trained snipers missed on their best days. But Sarah wasn't thinking about them. She was already moving. Shift left, her voice was sharp now, command cutting through chaos. Lance, smoke out now. They obeyed without hesitation. Sarah vaulted from the MRAP, landing hard on sand and blood. She moved low and fast, weapon tight to her body, scanning angles, predicting lines of fire before the enemy could adjust. Each step was muscle memory. Each breath was calculation. 15 years of experience she'd tried to erase, all coming back in a storm. Targets appeared. 12 of them. Each went down before they could even reload. In 45 seconds, the battlefield was silent. 45 seconds to transform from medic to myth. When she reached, he was bleeding out fast, arterial wound, subclavian hit. He looked up at her, eyes wide, disbelief painted across his face. You, he stammered, you're not. Save your strength. Her rifle hit the ground beside her. Her hands were already working, pressing, packing, wrapping. Back to what they knew best, healing. Stay with me, her voice cracked only once. You're too stubborn to die on me now. Lips trembled. I'm sorry, we didn't know. Shut up, she whispered, just breathe. But tears were falling, not his, hers. Because she'd broken her vow. She picked up the rifle again. And no matter how many lives she saved tonight, the ledger would never balance. The radio came alive again, his voice, tight and urgent. Authentication, Ghost 77, confirm. A pause, then another voice, flat, official. Phantom 27, CIA Special Activities Division, 47 confirmed kills, Syria, Yemen, Libya. Every soldier in the convoy heard. Every single one of them now knew. Their terrified medic, the woman they'd mocked and humiliated, was the Aleppo ghost. His voice was a whisper. You're the one who took out that cell solo, the one who refused orders. Sarah didn't answer. Her hands kept moving, packing wounds, inserting IVs, clamping arteries. Saving lives. Not taking them. Lance's voice broke the silence. Why didn't you tell us? Sarah looked up briefly, because I wanted to stop being her. The rest of the soldiers fell quiet. None of them knew what to say. The desert wind carried only the groan of twisted metal and the faint hiss of burning fuel. Overhead, the thudding of approaching rotors. Medevac. But it felt like judgment. The first helicopter set down in a swirl of dust and smoke. Operators in unmarked uniforms rushed out, weapons drawn, eyes sweeping the area. Sarah ignored them. Miller was still alive, barely. Collapsed lung, she needed to decompress. Her hands found the long needle, sliding between ribs with perfect precision. Air hissed, the boy gasped, then drew a shaky breath. Relief flooded through her. One more life pulled back from the brink. A shadow fell across her. No rank now, just the handler beneath the uniform. Time to go, Agent Mitchell. I'm not leaving, she said, not looking up. Not until they're stable. That's not a request. Then you'll have to shoot me. The men hesitated. because around her the wounded soldiers had formed a ring. Weapons raised, bloodied, unsteady, but united. Doc stays, rasped. Anyone touches her, they answer to me. Even pale and shaking on his stretcher, managed a nod. She's ours. The CIA operators froze. No one wanted a gunfight between Americans in the middle of Iraq. His phone buzzed. He listened for 5 seconds. His expression changed horror, then dread. "Scorpion hit your sister's school," he said quietly. Security stopped him, but he left a message. Sarah's hand stilled. "Is she alive?" "For now, but he says he has all their names, every soldier in this unit, their families, unless you come alone." The world went silent again. Even the helicopters seemed to hold their breath. "I'll go," Sarah said finally. "No," his voice was a growl. "We don't negotiate with terrorists." "You don't understand," she began, but Lance cut her off. "We understand enough. You saved us all. Whatever debt you think you owe, it's paid." Sarah shook her head slowly. "It's never paid." She looked at the men she'd just saved. The same men who'd mocked her, doubted her, filmed her pain for fun, and all she saw were faces worth saving. She stood, body shaking with exhaustion, eyes hard with resolve. "I'll finish this," she said, "and then it's over." No one argued, because they'd seen what happened when Sarah Mitchell picked up a rifle. Later, as the medevac birds lifted off into the night, their rotors painting halos of dust, Sarah stood alone among the wreckage, half medic, half ghost. The sky over Iraq glowed red with distant fires. She looked down at her hands, stained in equal measure with blood and gunpowder. One side for saving, one side for killing. And for the first time, she couldn't tell which weighed more. Sometimes the war isn't out there. It's inside you. And when both halves finally meet, healer and hunter, guilt and survival, the battlefield goes silent. But peace never comes easy to those who earned it in blood. War doesn't end when the shooting stops. Sometimes it only begins when the silence sets in. The convoy's wreckage still burned behind her, a twisted memorial of steel, smoke, and survival. And in that smoke stood Sarah Mitchell, the medic who wasn't supposed to fight, and the ghost the agency swore had died years ago. Her hands were still slick with blood, some from her soldiers, some from the ones who tried to kill them. 12 hostiles down. 6 lives saved. And one truth she couldn't outrun anymore. Phantom 27 was alive. The helicopters came like vultures, their blades carving the desert air into chaos. Unmarked, silent, black ops birds. Sarah didn't flinch when they landed. She didn't even look up when the men in tactical gear surrounded her. "Agent Mitchell," the lead operator called, his voice muffled behind a helmet. "We need to move." She ignored him, checking his airway instead. "His pulse." "Steady," Lance said beside her, voice cracking. "Good," she whispered. "Keep him talking until the medevac arrives." "Ma'am," the operator said again, firmer this time. "We have orders." Sarah didn't answer. Orders? She followed those once. And 3 people had died because of it. Appeared through the dust, not as a soldier now, but as what he really was, agency. Civilian clothes, comms earpiece, sidearm, eyes that never stopped calculating. "Sarah," he said quietly, "you need to come with us. Not until they're stable. You're not Army anymore." Her eyes lifted slowly, calm and cold. "I'm a medic, that doesn't expire." The surrounding operators hesitated, uneasy under her gaze. "5 more minutes," she said, voice steady, "or shoot me where I stand." And for 5 minutes, they watched as she worked. Tourniquets, pressure dressings, morphine doses written on the skin in black marker. She didn't stop until the last soldier was on a stretcher. Only then did she rise, removing her gloves with deliberate calm. "Now," she said, "we can go." The flight back to base was quiet. Too quiet. Inside the helicopter, Sarah sat opposite, her hands folded on her knees like a prisoner who already knew the verdict. "Do you know what you did out there?" he asked finally. She didn't look up. "Saved my unit." "You exposed yourself," replied. "The agency buried Phantom 27 for a reason." "I didn't ask to be buried," she said. Sighed, rubbing his temple. "Scorpion was right. He's been hunting you for 2 years. You just gave him your location." "Then we end it," she said simply. "That's exactly what headquarters wants." Her jaw tightened. Of course they do. By the time they landed at Forward Operating Base Prosperity, word had already spread. Every soldier on base knew the story, the medic who'd taken down an ambush with sniper precision. Some saluted her, some avoided her eyes. All of them whispered the same name behind her back. The Aleppo Ghost. Sarah walked through them without acknowledgement. She didn't belong here anymore, not among soldiers, not among spooks. She was something in between, a weapon wrapped in white gauze. Escorted her straight into a dimly lit operations room. 2 men in suits were waiting, the kind that sweated under desert heat but never took off their jackets. One smiled without warmth. "Agent Mitchell, I'm Deputy Director Harrison." She didn't respond, just started removing her gloves, one slow peel at a time. "We appreciate your cooperation," Harrison continued. "We need to debrief you about the Aleppo incident and the recent attack." Sarah's voice was flat. "Debriefing or interrogation?" "Semantics," he said with a shrug. "You were one of our best until you broke." The word hung in the air like poison. Sarah's eyes flicked up. "I didn't break, I refused." Harrison's smirk faltered. "Refused what?" "To shoot through children," she said. "To follow an order that should never have existed." The room went cold. Shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Harrison folded his hands. "You took an oath." "So did you," Sarah snapped. "The one that says protect the innocent. Tell me which of us kept it." Silence. Then, after a beat, Harrison said, "You're the only one who can stop Scorpion now. He's made it personal. He's targeting your old unit. He's already proven what he's capable of." Sarah looked down at her blood-stained hands. "And you're not going to stop him unless I do it for you." Harrison didn't deny it. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the low hum of the generator outside. Then Sarah spoke quietly. "Where?" Babylon said, "The ruins where your partnership began." Sarah's breath caught. Babylon, the old city, their first joint operation, back when she and Scorpion trusted each other with their lives. She closed her eyes, fitting. Harrison slid a folder across the table. "Your kit's already prepared, your rifles cleaned and zeroed. Welcome back, Phantom." "I'm not back," she said, standing. "I'm finishing it." "And after?" She met his gaze. "After this, you'll never find me again." That night, the base was quieter than usual. Word had spread Doc, going on a mission. Soldiers she'd never spoken to stopped her in the halls. Some saluted. Some just nodded with quiet respect. "Thank you for what you did out there," one said. "My cousin was Delta, said you saved his team in Aleppo." Sarah forced a small smile, but it never reached her eyes. They wanted her to be their hero. Their proof that even medics could fight. But they didn't understand that every time she picked up a weapon, she buried another piece of herself. In her barracks, she packed quietly. A photograph, 4 faces blurred by time and guilt. A few personal items. And the one thing she'd never leave behind, her medical kit. She packed it like a ritual, each motion steady, precise. Every item in its place, control over chaos. Lance appeared in the doorway, arms folded, worry carved into his face. "You're not really going after him alone, are you?" She zipped her pack shut. "I have to." "No, you don't," he said. "You saved us, that's enough." She paused. "You ever try to sleep with ghosts?" He said nothing. I owe them, she whispered. All of them, the ones I killed, the ones I couldn't save. Every life has weight. The ledger never balances, but I can try. Lance took a step forward. Then promise me you'll come back. She met his eyes for the first time. Take care of them, Lance. Miller, keep them breathing. He nodded jaw tight. Yes, Doc. She hesitated, then added softly, tell them medics do fight, just not for glory. The air on the tarmac was thick with dust and heat. A single Black Hawk waited, rotors spinning lazily. Stood beside it, dressed in full tactical gear this time. Ready? He asked. Sarah looked past him, toward the horizon where the desert met the stars. No, she said, but that never mattered before. They climbed aboard. The engines roared to life, and the helicopter lifted into the night, a dark silhouette crossing the fractured land that had birthed both angels and monsters. Somewhere below them, ancient Babylon waited. Stone ruins half buried in sand. A place where civilizations had fallen, and men had written the first laws of war. And now, two ghosts were going back, one to end a vendetta, the other to find a kind of redemption that didn't exist in any manual. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the thrum of the rotors vibrate through her bones. She told herself she was doing this for her soldiers, for her sister, for closure. But deep down she knew the truth. She was doing it because there was still a part of her that needed to face him. Scorpion, the man who once saved her life. The man who now wanted to end it. Below, the desert glowed silver under the moon. The pilot's voice came through the comms. 1 minute to drop zone. Sarah pulled her hood up, checked her rifle one last time. Every motion was automatic, almost peaceful. Glanced at her. You know he won't stop until one of you's dead. I know, she said softly, but that's not the part that scares me. What does? That I'll understand him. The Black Hawk banked low, skimming over the ruins. Wind tore through the cabin. Sarah rose, hand gripping the doorframe, eyes locked on the dark maze of stone below. Remember, said, we'll have Overwatch ready to intervene. No, she cut him off. No drones, no snipers, this is between us. That's not protocol. Neither was Aleppo. The helicopter flared, touching down in a storm of dust. Sarah jumped out, boots hitting ancient earth. The wind howled through broken walls, the whispers of dead empires. She didn't look back. As the helicopter lifted away, his voice came through her earpiece one last time. Phantom, do you copy? Static. Then her voice low and certain, don't follow. And the line went dead. Some debts can't be repaid with blood. Only with understanding. And sometimes, the only way to forgive yourself is to face the one who never will. The ruins of Babylon waited. And somewhere in that silence, Scorpion waited too. Two ghosts. One unfinished story. Night had teeth. It bit through her uniform, through the dust-thick air, through the calm she was pretending to feel. The ruins of Babylon sprawled around her, stone bones of an empire that once believed gods could forgive anything. Maybe they still could. But Sarah wasn't counting on gods tonight. Only ghosts. She moved soundlessly through broken archways, the moon painting silver scars across her rifle. Every footstep was deliberate, measured, the dance of someone who had spent half her life surviving the dark. Somewhere out there, Scorpion was waiting. Her partner. Her hunter. The man who knew her heartbeat as well as she did. The wind shifted. A faint click echoed off the stones, metal on stone, safety off. Hello, Phantom. The voice drifted through the ruins, smooth, unhurried, too close and too far at once. It carried no hate, only exhaustion sharpened into purpose. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come. Sarah's reply was a whisper. You always knew I would. A single muzzle flash split the dark. The round whined past her ear, close enough to tear the air. He could have killed her. He didn't. "You're predictable," he called. "Still can't take cover when someone needs you." She ducked behind a fallen column, heart hammering. "You're talking instead of finishing it. That's not you, John." Silence, then quietly, "Don't call me that." She steadied her breath, 3 counts in, 3 out. Every exhale mapped the ground between them. The pattern of echoes, the tone of his voice, it was coming from the west ridge, near the collapsed ziggurat. Classic sniper high ground. Classic Scorpion. She crawled low, hands brushing ancient inscriptions worn smooth by centuries. Words about justice, about balance. Words written by men who also believed the ledger could be settled. She smiled bitterly. "Balance," she murmured, "always the joke." Another shot cracked. Dust exploded inches from her knee. "Stop hiding," he said. "That's not who you are." "You don't know who I am anymore." "Oh, I know exactly who you are." His voice softened. "You're the one who hesitates." The words hit harder than bullets. She reached the base of the ridge and waited, counting the rhythm of his shots. 3 seconds between each one. Enough to move. She darted out, rolled behind a half-buried pillar. The stone chipped under the next round. They were circling each other now, 2 predators who had once moved as one. "Tell me something," Scorpion called. "When you pulled the trigger in Iraq, did it feel good?" Sarah's jaw clenched. "It felt necessary." "That's what they teach us to say when we start to like it." "You think I liked it?" "I think," he said, "you liked remembering who you were." The moon slid from behind a cloud, spilling light over the ridge. For an instant she saw him. The same lean frame, same sure stance, rifle steady, eyes like cold iron. But time had carved him hollow. The fury that used to burn behind those eyes had cooled into something quieter. Grief turned to gravity. She sighted in. The crosshair rested on his chest. She could end it right here. But her finger refused. He saw it, of course he did. He laughed once, low and broken. "Still can't take the shot." They were children, John. They were weapons. His shout echoed off stone, raw and bleeding. "Do you know what it's like to pull the trigger on your own son because your partner could?" She didn't answer. There were no words big enough to hold that kind of pain. He fired again, deliberately missing. The bullet sang past her cheek. "You think hiding behind a medic's cross makes you clean," he said. "You think sewing up a few soldiers pays for what we did." "I don't think it pays," she whispered. "I think it helps me live with it." "Then you're still lying to yourself." He shifted position. She tracked the sound, felt it in her bones. They were less than 50 meters apart now. She rose slowly from cover, weapon lowered but ready. "If you wanted me dead, you'd have done it already." Scorpion stepped into the open, rifle hanging at his side. In the moonlight his face looked older, lined, but the eyes were the same. The eyes of the man who once pulled her bleeding from a rooftop and told her to keep breathing. "I don't want you dead, Sarah," he said quietly. "I want you to understand." They stood facing each other among stones older than sin itself. "You think I don't understand?" she asked. "You lost your son, you lost your team, you lost yourself, but killing me won't bring them back." "It's not about bringing them back." He looked down at the dust beneath his boots. "It's about ending the lie. Aleppo wasn't what they told us." Her breath caught. "Don't." "Oh, but you never wanted to know, did you?" His tone turned sharp. Operation Red Sand wasn't a counter-terror raid. It was a hit. The terrorist negotiator we were ordered to kill, he was brokering peace. A peace that would shut down half the arms contracts funding our side of the war. She stared at him, unable to speak. "You refused because of the kids," he continued. "But the real reason they buried you, buried us, was because we were witnesses." Sarah's rifle dipped. "You're lying." He shook his head slowly. "You already knew, you just couldn't face it." Memories flared, the mission brief, the fuzzy satellite photos, the uneasy feeling she'd pushed aside. All of it snapping into focus now. She had been fighting for ghosts and for profit. "I'm done running from them," he said, pulling a small detonator from his vest. "They turned us into monsters, Sarah. Maybe it's time monsters bit back." Her eyes widened. "What did you do?" "The ruins are wired. Enough C4 to wipe this place and any trace of us off the map. They'll write a report, both assets KIA, clean ending for everyone." "You'll kill us both." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's mercy." Sarah took a slow step forward, lowering her weapon. "John, please. We can still fix something. Not all of it, but something." "What, patch up the world like another patient?" His laugh was dry. "You really think bandages work on this kind of wound?" "Maybe not," she said softly, "but I know what doesn't: revenge." He aimed the rifle again. "You're still hesitating." "And you're still hurting," she said. "That's not the same thing." The wind gusted, carrying the smell of sand and old stone. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Scorpion's rifle dipped, just slightly. "Tell me one reason," he said, voice trembling now. "One reason I shouldn't press this button." Sarah stepped closer, until the barrel of his gun rested against her chest. "Because if you do," she whispered, "you prove they were right about us." He stared at her for a long, endless moment. Then the tension broke. His shoulders sagged, the rifle sliding from his hands. "You always were impossible," he murmured. The detonator dangled between his fingers. He turned it over once and let it fall. It hit the dirt softly, harmless. For the first time in 2 years, she saw his eyes without rage in them, only ruin and recognition. "Now what?" he asked. Sarah looked out over the dark horizon. "Now we disappear, for real this time, no more ghosts, no more killing." He gave a tired, crooked smile. "You think they'll let us?" "Then we stop running," she said, "and we start saving." They stood there as the first pale light crept over the desert. Two soldiers who had finally run out of orders. For a moment the wind was gentle, carrying the faintest hint of something almost forgotten: peace. Sarah knelt, picked up the detonator and buried it in the sand. "Let the dead stay buried." She turned to him. "We walk east. There's a supply convoy near. We can vanish from there." Scorpion nodded once. "You always had the better plans." "Not always," she said, glancing at the rifle still lying between them. "This one better work." As they disappeared into the shimmering dawn, his voice crackled faintly from the earpiece still hanging around her neck. "Phantom report, we heard a shot. Do you copy?" Sarah pulled the device free, looked at it for a long moment, then dropped it into the dust. "Let them wonder. Let the ghosts sleep. Some wars end in gunfire. Others end in understanding. But the hardest battles, the ones that leave scars no medic can stitch, end only when two broken souls decide to stop fighting each other and start fighting for something better." The sun climbed higher, burning away the night. And somewhere between the ruins of Babylon and the rising light, two names, Phantom and Scorpion, faded into legend. They never looked back. Behind them, the ruins of Babylon glowed faintly under the rising sun, a tomb for every secret that ever wore a uniform. For the first time in years, Sarah Mitchell wasn't following orders. And John Scorpion Hale wasn't giving them. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, cruel, silent, cleansing. Each step felt like erasing a name. By nightfall, they reached a small village near the Euphrates, one of those places the maps forgot after too many wars. Children stared from doorways, wary but curious. A woman offered them water. No one asked who they were. That silence was mercy. Sarah accepted the cup with shaking hands. The water tasted of dust and forgiveness. John sank onto a stone ledge, exhausted. "So this is it," he said. "No gunfire, no extraction, just stop existing." "That's the point," she murmured, "to see what living feels like when no one's shooting at you." He gave a hollow laugh. "I wouldn't know where to start." "Then start small," she said. "Drink, rest, help someone who can't help you back." They stayed. Days became weeks. The village doctor was an old man named, more bone than flesh. His clinic little more than a room with fatting posters and half-empty bottles. He didn't ask questions either, only looked at the strangers with steady eyes and said, "If you can hold a scalpel, I can use the help." Sarah found herself cleaning wounds again, stitching torn skin, whispering comfort in broken Arabic. Her hands remembered the rhythm, her soul the purpose. John repaired the generator, built shelves, hauled water. He never spoke about the detonator or the sun or the agency. But sometimes she'd see him watching the children play outside, expression unreadable. He'd turn away before the ache could show. At night, they sat outside under a sky so full of stars it felt almost obscene. The desert wind hummed through the ruins like an old prayer. "You ever think they're still looking for us?" he asked one evening. "They buried us," she said. "It's easier for them if we stay dead." He nodded slowly. "Maybe they're right." "Maybe," she whispered, "but being dead has never felt this alive." Then came the outbreak. A waterborne disease spread through the nearby camps. Refugees, soldiers, families, civilians stranded by borders no one guarded anymore. Collapse from exhaustion on the third day. Sarah didn't hesitate. She took command of the clinic, turned the dusty storage room into an isolation ward, converted IV tubes from scavenged gear. John helped without question, moving with the same precision he once used clearing buildings. "Funny," he muttered while sterilizing scalpels over a flame. "We used to break things this clean." She smiled faintly. "Now we fix them, balance, remember." For 3 nights straight they worked without sleep. The air smelled of antiseptic and sweat and prayers. Sarah's voice stayed steady, even as her hands blistered. When a child's fever broke, she whispered, "You're safe now." When one didn't, she whispered the same words softer. On the 4th night, John found her outside, slumped against the wall, staring at her blood-stained gloves. "They're never clean," she said quietly. He sat beside her. "They're never meant to be, we just keep using them anyway." She turned to look at him, really look, and saw, for the first time, the man behind the weapon. Tired, haunted, trying. She reached out, laid a hand over his. For a moment the ghost stepped back. Weeks passed. The sickness ebbed. The villagers called her Sarah. They called him Mr. John, the one who fixed everything that wasn't flesh. Rumors spread of 2 foreigners who healed without payment, who never stayed long enough for thanks. Whispers drifted across borders, down radio channels, through agency ears. The CIA's official line remained unchanged. Phantom 27, KIA. Scorpion, KIA. But somewhere in Langley, listened to a field report about a remote clinic treating soldiers and civilians alike, run by a woman with a scar above her left eyebrow and eyes that didn't flinch at blood. He didn't forward it. He just closed the file, leaned back and whispered, "Good luck, Doc." By late summer, the river swelled again, bringing traders and noise and reminders that the world outside hadn't stopped burning. Gunfire echoed from distant hills. War was moving closer. Sarah felt it like a storm in her bones. One night she found John packing ammunition he'd scavenged from a downed convoy. "You're planning to fight?" she asked. He didn't answer. "John," she said softly, "this place is different. We protect it by staying human." He looked up, eyes shadowed. "And when the war finds us, then we save who we can before it does." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You really believe we can change?" "No," she said, "but I believe we can try." The next day, soldiers arrived, not American, not local, just another nameless faction wearing borrowed uniforms. They demanded medicine, fuel, food. Tried to reason with them. They hit him across the face. Sarah stepped forward before she could think. Stop! The nearest soldier swung his rifle toward her. John was faster. In a blink, the weapon was in his hands, and the man was on the ground. The others froze. Sarah's voice was calm but deadly quiet. You take what you need, but you leave the people. They hesitated, then left, muttering curses into the dust. When it was over, Sarah turned to John. You said no more weapons. He dropped the rifle. I didn't fire it. She looked at him, the restraint, the line he hadn't crossed, and realized he was trying harder than she'd ever given him credit for. That night, the villagers gathered to thank them. Someone lit candles, children brought flowers. Sarah couldn't look at any of it without tears. Raised his trembling hand. You brought life back to this place. Stay. She smiled softly. We'll stay until the next ones need us. Later, under the same unblinking stars, John spoke quietly. You think this is redemption? She shook her head. Redemption for stories, this is survival with purpose. He nodded. That's enough for me. Days blurred again into the rhythm of rebuilding. Sarah taught local girls basic medicine. John repaired a well, taught boys how to handle tools instead of guns. The war moved on without touching them. For a while. But peace, she'd learned, is like a heartbeat, fragile, fleeting, and too easy to silence. One morning, a child came running with a message. A stranger had arrived, asking for the doctor with gray eyes. Sarah's pulse quickened. No one here knew that detail. She stepped outside, sunlight blazing, air still, and saw a single figure at the edge of the village. A man in civilian clothes, hands raised, no weapon. When he spoke, the accent froze her blood. Dr. Mitchell, my name is Captain Lance. She hadn't heard that name in months. You survived, she breathed. He smiled faintly, thanks to you. Behind him, a small convoy of aid trucks waited. Real relief work, real soldiers, official emblems. I've been looking for you, he said. Command thinks you're dead, but I'm not here for them. I'm here because there's a refugee corridor opening near Mosul. We could use people like you, doctors, builders. John appeared beside her, silent. Lance looked between them, understanding dawning. You both deserve a second chance. We could make it official. Sarah studied the horizon. She could almost hear the hum of rotors, the weight of orders waiting to chain her again. She looked at John. He said nothing, just nodded once, letting the choice be hers. The wind rose, carrying dust and the faint sound of children laughing behind her. I'll think about it, she said finally. Lance smiled. That's all I hoped for. He turned to go, but paused. For what it's worth, Doc, they still tell stories about you. The medic who fought, the ghost who saved her unit. She looked down, a sad smile on her lips. Tell them she finally learned how to stop fighting. When he left, John asked quietly, You believe him? I believe in helping people, she said. Doesn't matter whose flag it's under. He nodded slowly. Then wherever you go, I'll follow. That night she watched the river glitter beneath the stars and thought about all the names she'd carried. Soldier, assassin, medic, ghost. Each one left a scar, a reminder, a lesson. Maybe this was who she'd always been meant to be. Not a weapon, not a savior, just someone who refused to stop trying. The war hadn't ended. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it finding her again. Because this time, she'd have something worth protecting. Sometimes redemption isn't loud. It's not medals or forgiveness or missions that make the news. Sometimes it's a pair of hands washing clean water over a child's wound. And a heart that finally beats for something other than survival. It's strange how quickly peace starts to feel like a borrowed thing. Too fragile to touch. Too brief to trust. For Sarah Mitchell, peace lasted exactly 24 days. 24 days of laughter echoing through the village clinic. 24 dawns without gunfire. 24 nights where John's quiet breathing meant she wasn't alone in the dark anymore. Then came the call. A convoy relief mission to Mosul, hundreds displaced, no doctors. And someone had remembered the medic who didn't flinch. She said yes before she could talk herself out of it. The morning they left, pressed a cloth-wrapped bundle into her hands. "Something to remind you why you do this," he said. Inside was a stethoscope, old but cared for, the same kind soldiers had brought him decades ago. The metal gleamed faintly in the light. She smiled, "Thank you." He touched her shoulder. "You cannot heal the world, Sarah, but you can keep its heart beating a little longer." She didn't answer, because she knew he was right. The convoy was 10 trucks long, aid crates, medical tents, volunteers, and a handful of armed escorts wearing the patch of the new coalition. Among them, Captain Lance. He greeted her with a grin. "Didn't think you'd actually show." "Neither did I," she said. John climbed into the lead vehicle without a word, scanning the horizon. Old habits died harder for him. Lance lowered his voice. "He still doesn't trust me, does he?" "He doesn't trust anyone with a radio," she said. "And honestly, neither do I." For 2 days, the desert passed in monotone silence. Heat by day, cold by night. Occasional checkpoints, children waving from crumbling buildings. Sarah treated minor injuries in the back of the truck, cuts, fevers, dehydration. John kept the engines running, the radios clear. They barely spoke about the past anymore. There was comfort in the routine, the hum of tires, the whisper of wind through sand. Until the third night. The ambush came softly this time. No explosions, no warning. Just the quiet disappearance of the last truck in line. One moment it was there, the next, nothing but dust. Lance barked orders, "Hold position, weapons ready." Sarah's heart sank, not again. She jumped from the truck, scanning the dark. No muzzle flashes, no movement, just stillness too heavy to be natural. Then the radio crackled. A voice she hadn't heard since Babylon. "Hello, Phantom." Her blood ran cold. Scorpion froze beside her. It wasn't possible. His voice came from her left. The same voice came from the radio. He ripped the earpiece from his ear, face pale. "That's not me." Sarah's mind raced. The agency. They'd found them. Lance's hand hovered near his rifle. What the hell going on? The radio hissed again, and a calm, precise tone answered. "You didn't really think we'd let 2 of our best vanish into the desert, did you?" "Yes." But something in his voice was wrong, colder, detached. "We let you run long enough," he continued. "We needed to see where you'd go, who you'd trust, and now, thanks to you, we know exactly who's hiding out here." Sarah's breath caught. "You used us." "Correction," said. "We redeployed you. You drew out half the black market supply lines in northern Iraq. Consider it your final assignment." The radio clicked off. Then the shooting started. Tracers carved through the night. Aid trucks burst into flames. Volunteers screamed. Sarah dove behind the wheel well, grabbing her med pack. "Lance, get the wounded to cover." He hesitated. "Sarah, that's agency fire, this isn't random." "Move," she shouted. Bullets chewed through the dirt around her. She crawled to a fallen soldier, applied pressure to the wound, felt the pulse fade beneath her hands. "Stay with me," she whispered, but the light in his eyes was already gone. Another scream, a driver pinned in a burning cab. Sarah ran toward the flames. John was already there, wrenching the door open with his bare hands. His skin blistered from the heat, but he didn't stop. Together they pulled the man free, rolled him into the sand. "You okay?" she gasped. John coughed through smoke. I told you peace doesn't last. The gunfire thinned. Whoever attacked them wasn't here to kill everyone, just to collect something. Sarah realized too late what. Lance was gone. They found his truck empty, the door ripped open. A single message burned onto the seat with a soldering tool. Endgame, Babylon. John's jaw tightened. They're pulling us back in. Sarah closed her eyes. It never ends. He looked at her. It ends when we make it end. At dawn, smoke drifted over the dead. Sarah and John buried the volunteers with their own hands. The survivors, refugees, medics, locals, looked to her for orders. What do we do now? A young nurse asked. Sarah stared at the horizon, where Mosul lay hidden in haze. We finish what they started, she said quietly. We deliver the supplies, save who we can. John stared at her. Then what? Then, she said, we go to Babylon. They rolled north with what was left of the convoy, 5 vehicles, 1 medic, 1 ghost. Every mile brought back the weight of the past. Every radio transmission reminded her how easily control can masquerade as care. John drove in silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. You think's gone rogue? No, she said. I think he's always been this way. He nodded slowly. Then we know where to find him. By nightfall, the skyline of Mosul rose, broken teeth of concrete against the dimming sky. They set up a triage post near a crumbling hospital. Sarah worked for hours under flashlight beams and distant artillery thunder. Every life she touched became a promise, not to fall back into the person they wanted her to be. But inside she knew there would be no peace until it was finished. When the last patient was stable, she found John outside, standing by the trucks. He was staring east toward Babylon. They'll expect us, she said. He nodded. Then we'll surprise them. She smiled faintly. You ever get tired of this? Every day, he said, but stopping isn't in our training. Neither is mercy, she said softly. He looked at her. Then maybe that's the one thing we teach them. The next morning, a drone passed overhead. For a moment, she thought it would strike. Instead, it dropped something, a canister that landed softly in the dirt beside her. Inside was a note. Come home, Phantom, or everyone dies. W. The paper trembled in her hand. She looked at John. It's not a threat, it's an invitation. He nodded once, then let's RSVP. That night she wrote a letter, one she didn't know if anyone would ever read. If they find this, tell them I was a medic first and everything else second. Tell them I fought because they left me no choice. Tell them the hardest part of war isn't dying, it's remembering why you lived. She folded it, left it in stethoscope case. Then she picked up her pack. The rifle. And the name she swore she'd never wear again. Phantom was going home. Back to where it began. Back to Babylon, the city that buried empires, and now waited to bury her past for good. Some wars never end. They just change shape. And sometimes the battlefield isn't about who dies. It's about who finally decides what's worth living for. There's a sound that lives in every soldier's memory. Not gunfire, not the scream of mortar shells. It's the quiet right before you decide who you're going to be next. For Sarah Mitchell, that sound was waiting in Babylon. The drive through the desert was wordless. The same horizon she'd once fled from now rose before her like an old scar reopened. John sat beside her, eyes hidden behind dusted lenses, his hand resting on the rifle across his lap, but he wasn't gripping it. Not yet. They passed the wreckage of their last war, half-buried trucks, broken helmets, the ghosts of uniforms the sand was already erasing. Sarah broke the silence. You don't have to come. John's reply was simple. You didn't have to save me. The wind swallowed their words. The rest of the drive was quiet. At dusk, the ruins came into view. Babylon, the place where she died once already. Now floodlights glared from between ancient stones. Black SUVs, portable antennas. A field base built over history's bones. The agency hadn't just returned. They'd moved in. Sarah parked the truck a mile out. They crossed the last stretch on foot, silent as ghosts. John's voice was barely a whisper. You realize this isn't about you anymore. I know. They'll kill you the second you walk in. Then I'll walk fast. He gave a short, bitter laugh. You always did. They reached the ridge overlooking the base. Dozens of armed men. Drones circling. A tent at the center glowing white under floodlight. Was there she could feel it. He'd always been the kind of man who built empires out of other people's obedience. John crouched beside her. We go in quiet. No, she said, we go in human. What does that mean? It means we stop pretending we're ghosts. She stood up, unarmed, and started walking down the hill. John's whisper followed her, Sarah. But she didn't stop. The spotlight found her first, slicing through the dark. Then the shouts came. Hold your fire, a voice barked. Let her through. He waited inside the tent, calm as ever, a cup of coffee steaming beside stacks of classified files. Gray hair now, eyes the same color as lies. Welcome home, Phantom, he said. Sarah stopped 3 steps inside. No one calls me that anymore. Everyone does, replied. You're a legend, the medic who killed ghosts, the sniper who saved lives. She said nothing. Her eyes scanned the room, maps, drone feeds, lists of targets labeled assets. Children, aid workers, entire families. Her throat tightened. You're still running it. He smiled faintly. Of course, someone has to. You and Hale were prototypes, proof of concept. You call that proof, she whispered. He leaned back, unconcerned. You survived, didn't you? The tent flap moved behind her. John stepped in, weapon lowered. His eyes flicked toward him. Scorpion, he said, still following her lead, I see. John's jaw tightened. Not anymore. Sarah took another step forward. Why bring us back? Because the program works, said. We're deploying it again. We need instructors. You two are perfect. No. He shrugged. You don't get to say no. You belong to this. Sarah's voice went quiet, too quiet. I used to, not anymore. Stood, moving closer. You think you're free. You've been hours since the day you signed that clearance form. Every life you saved, every bullet you fired, every scar you carry, all of it belongs to the flag on your shoulder. I don't wear that flag anymore. He smirked. No, you just hide behind bandages and charity trucks, but you'll always come back, Sarah, because war is all you understand. The silence between them stretched, taut as wire. Then said softly, do you know what your sister's doing right now? Her head snapped up. He slid a tablet across the table. A live feed flickered. Her sister's school, now a military hospital. Soldiers in the courtyard, one of them wearing her sister's badge. Volunteer work, he said. She's brave like you. Shame if that bravery got misplaced in the wrong crossfire. Sarah's voice trembled. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? John's rifle rose before could finish. But Sarah's hand went up, stopping him. No, she said quietly. He wants us to shoot him, makes it clean. Smile returned. You finally learned. No, she said. I remembered. She walked to the table, eyes fixed on the files. One bore the seal of the program that had built them, Project. Underneath were field dossiers, names of operatives, targets, handlers. All tied to. All proof. She picked up a lighter from his desk, flicked it once. What are you doing? He asked. Ending it. The flame touched the paper. The files curled, blackened, dissolved into ash. Lunged forward. Do you have any idea what you're destroying? Yes, she said, my grave. He grabbed her wrist. You'll regret this. She looked at his hand, calmly, then back at him. I already regret enough. With one motion, she broke his grip and pushed him back into the wall. John stepped forward, rifle steady, but aimed at the floor. Walk away, he said, while you still can. Sneered, you think the agency stops with me. I'm a line in a chain. You can't cut the whole thing. Sarah stared at him. Maybe not, but I can make sure it forgets my name. Outside, alarms blared. The burning files had tripped the smoke sensors. Sarah turned to John. Time to go. He nodded, but's voice followed them. You'll come back, Phantom. They always do. She paused at the tent flap, looked back once. No, she said softly. This time she dies here. They ran. Bullets tore through the dark as guards opened fire. John covered her, returning controlled bursts, moving like the soldier he tried to forget. A round grazed her shoulder. She stumbled. He caught her arm, dragged her behind a collapsed pillar. You hit. Just scratched. He smirked. You always say that. She looked up at him, blood streaking down her sleeve. Still true. An explosion rocked the ground, tent going up in flames, the blaze devouring every file, every secret. Sarah watched the fire climb into the night, lighting the ruins like a funeral pyre. It's over, John said. She shook her head. It never is, but it's enough. By dawn, they were miles away. The desert stretched endless and quiet again, as if nothing had ever happened. Sarah's wound was bandaged, her breathing steady. John drove in silence for a long time, then asked, So what now? She looked out at the horizon, the same one she'd fled, fought, and finally survived. Now, she said, we go where we're needed. He smiled faintly, still the medic. Always, she said, but this time by choice. Weeks later, a small clinic reopened in a refugee camp near the Syrian border. No names on the door. No ranks. Just a sign in chalk, help here. Children came first, then families, then soldiers who'd forgotten what side they were on. And the woman who ran it never asked questions, just stitched, listened, healed. Sometimes at night when the wind shifted, she'd hear distant rotors. She'd pause, waiting for the shadows. But they never came. Not anymore. One evening, a little girl pointed to the old scar above Sarah's eyebrow. What's that? Sarah smiled, a reminder. Of what? She looked out toward the dying light. That sometimes you have to fight to stay kind. The girl nodded, not really understanding, and ran off laughing. Sarah watched her go, then looked down at her hands. Still stained, but steady. John found her there later, sitting under the fading sky. He said quietly, they'll rebuild the program. I know. They'll find new ghosts. Then we'll find them first. He smiled, you ready to fight again? She shook her head. No, I'm ready to heal what they break. For a while, neither of them spoke. The sun slipped beneath the horizon, painting the sand gold one last time. Sarah closed her eyes and breathed, really breathed, for the first time in years. No orders. No targets. No ghosts. Just the steady rhythm of life. And somewhere deep inside her, the part that once called itself Phantom finally went quiet. Not gone. Just at peace. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And when it's done, it leaves nothing behind but the echo of a promise kept. That even in the darkest places, humanity can still remember how to heal.